Now the steering head bearings on my Vmax. Apparently this is quite a difficult job to do. I'm going to try to do it without using exotic or expensive tooling. I'm going to try to use whatever I have under my hand over here. So right now, the entire column assembly has been pulled out before I put it back together for the video purpose. We're going to disassemble everything and see in what order it should be done. And then we're going to try to tackle these bearing races out of the column shaft and the column tube right here. The bearing races are pressed in. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Obviously, the suspension fork has been removed. The tube have been removed. I've removed also the handlebars. You'll also want to remove the headlight, disconnect everything from inside the headlight, and then you can separate the entire assembly out. So this is a clean access, clean view of everything together. And then you can start by removing this top nut right here that simply holds the top plate over here. Right here, nut, and we can pull this one out. So first part out. Following this, we have this nut assembly. You can take this little locking device, this little locking shim. Before there's a small gasket right here that goes there, small rubber gasket. You may want to replace them as they might be dried and pretty squeezed. And then those nuts are already untight. You want to maybe remove the first one. If you remove the second one, the entire column may fall out. Holding like that, removing those two nuts. See, the entire thing just came out loose. Let me get this out of the way. Now, as I said, everything was pulled out before doing this video. I've put it back just to show you guys how the parts are assembled. So 2 spanner nuts, they're called spanner nuts. When we tighten them back, we're going to use a special tool. Now to dismantle them, I've used a vice grip. You can see the marks that I left. Not too bad, but not ideal. So I bought a $20 tool on Amazon, spanner nut for 40 millimeters. Those are 40 millimeter nuts. So that's the kind of tool that you're going to need. I'll put the link into the description. Now this, as I said, will fall out like this. We have our steering shaft like this. This bearing has been already cut. There are rollers. I'll show you after. There are rollers right here. I've removed them already. Now the top bearing is also a cup bearing. You should be able to pry it out. It might be stuck with old grease, but it should come right out like this. And this is going to be thrown away. I can see marks. I can see pitting. So it's not a pretty view. As I said, my steering column was pretty stuttering. There was a sweet spot in the middle, and then the two extremities would be extremely hard to turn. The next step is going to be a bit more difficult. We have to remove this bearing race right here. So there's for the top one, we're lucky because there's a small ridge on which against we can get something to grab onto and push it out from the other side. So this is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to be using our first non-exotic tool. I'm sorry about that, but that's the only way I could find. And this is like 20 bucks on Amazon. I'll put the link in the description. Basically what it is that something you insert from the bearing race side. I'm going to squeeze it in so it enters like this. And just as you're past the ridge that I was describing before, you expand the tool to a larger diameter. I'll use a wrench right here to give it a bit of squeezing, not too much. I'm sorry, you need to unscrew it so it expands, just to make sure that in all angle it is firmly. You can wiggle it around, feel that it's really grabbing the ridge. Now, next step, we're going to be using a bit of force. This is pretty much the only metal piece or metal tube that I could hammer with enough force that I could find. So I've taken 2 ratchet extension, 1/2 inch like this, and I'm going to be tapping on each of those legs. This thing is made from 2 legs, so I'm going to be coming from the inside on that hammering surface on one side a bit, then alternate like this. I might also turn it around. I'll see how the race is coming out. So I reach like this. Oh, I see it already moving. So I'm going to be tapping on the other side. So switching to the other side. All right, it's coming out. It's coming out. There we go. So we have our first bearing race out. We'll be cleaning this a bit, and we'll be tackling the downside. The bottom side, or the bottom end, doesn't have the same ridge as on the top. So this will have to be creative. I'll try to figure out a way to either grind some ridge so we can grab with our tool, just like we did with this one. I don't know at this point. So let's find out. We're now ready to remove this bearing out of the shaft. So this is a cup bearing with rollers inside. I've already cut the cage right here with the Dremel to remove it, and then remove the rollers. I threw them out. There's a handful of them. And we're now left with the bearing race. A very nice bearing race that is pressed very solidly on that shaft. So it's going to be a challenge to remove. I thought initially to grind this piece so I could crack it open, but it took time to get to that level already with the Dremel. I haven't tried with the die grinder because I was afraid to damage the surface. So I think that we're going to try something else. Worst comes to worst, we're going to go back to the die grinder and be very, very careful. All right, I knew I told you I would like to keep it simple. I don't use any exotic tool, but this kit was 40 bucks on Amazon. I think it's worth it. It's always very practical when you do mechanic to have a proper bearing puller kit. Well, proper. This is a pretty cheap and basic bearing puller kit, but I think it should get the job done. As mentioned earlier, this cup bearing had a roller cage, and the rollers were sitting on that edge right here. So we're going to leverage that edge to grab our bearing race with this assembly. So basically, I've used many parts from the kit, long extension to make up for the long shaft, and I will put a socket on top right here to protect that surface from getting damaged when pulling. So let's put this in, grab the bearing. All right, I think we're ready. Let's apply some torque. I heard a sound. I think we have movement. Oh, yes. I think the bearing is coming. There we have it. Bearing removed. Now we're going to try to remove the lower bearing race out of the steering column. To do so, the idea I have right now, and this is pretty much what I've read online, is people usually create 2 notches inside here. So I'm going to try to create 1 notch on this wall and another notch on this wall. I'll try to have the notches big enough, large enough, so the previous tool that we used for the upper bearing race, I can use the same one. So let's try to create that that room so we can grab with the extractor. So obviously it takes way too long, and the notch that I'm trying to create over here is not wide enough for the tool, not properly aligned, and plenty of reason why it's not grabbing. So the other idea I'm going to try right now before continuing that path is taking one of those pry bars from the top, trying to grab the grooves that I just made on either side and hammer them down. But obviously this does not have the right angle, so we're going to correct that. Using some heat and the sledgehammer and the die grinder, I was able to reshape this pry bar to have this little lip over here. And honestly, it worked pretty good. So I've also rounded, as you can see, I've rounded the edge so it matches better the inside of the groove that I created into the internal bearing race. And yeah, it's coming out. So we're going to keep hammering the bearing, and it's almost out. See the groove that I created? I get my my tool in there, and then I hammered from the top. It is right now sliding out. Yeah, we got it. That's it for this video. I'll now be cleaning all of these parts and make them shiny again, and I'll make them ready for another video on the reassembly and adjustment of these steering head bearings. I hope you enjoyed, and see you soon.